Appreciate you, my man. What's up, Tom? How are you doing today? Yeah, 7-2. Come on, my friend. Thomas, you like Thomas? We never call him Thomas. We should call him
Thomas. Joyce, what's going on? Let's push this. Not the smartest guys in the room. One of the things I wanted to talk about today, Tom, was
Hey Dom, hang on 1 second. Can you mute your mic on that side? Got a crazy echo going on. Not in Clubhouse. Your mic on your laptop there for the stream.
Got it, brother.
Still got a crazy echo.
Tom, I notice anytime, I'm going to mute you real quick. Mute you.
Yeah,
I notice anytime when we start the show, if your mic's on,
Tom, you gotta turn your speakers off on that side, dude. I got a crazy echo going on. Turn your computer speakers off. Are they off? Yeah, I don't know what's going on. All right, I'm gonna mute myself. I'll try to figure it out. See if it's on my end.
Okay, good. We're working some bugs out here. So what I noticed, Tom, is if you take your Clubhouse mic off, then I get the echo back on. So I always try to, especially at the beginning of the show, so I always try to put so if we're both open at the same time, then I get an echo back. So I don't know what's going on. But right now, yours isn't on, so let's go. 7-2, what's going on today, my friend?
Not just getting ready to do my own podcast later. I'm going to be talking about Stoic journaling today. So that's really what I've been focusing on, because I was in some rooms and talking with discussions of people, and they're getting towards that end of the year. They want to plant seeds, they want to do things, and so I was like, why don't I just create an episode about how I do it and the benefits of it. So I kind of lay it out very simple.
So what is Stoic journaling? Tell me more.
Well, Stoic journaling is taking I read quotes every day, Stoic quotes. I review, say if I'm looking at Marcus Aurelius's meditations, and he writes parables. So when he writes something and I read something, I think of a question that would go along with it. Like, for example, yesterday was don't lament on anything and get agitated with it. And that's from his 7.43. And the question would be, how can I be less agitated and complain about things, at the same time? So it's a simple question. So the reason why I made that question is because lament means that you're kind of circling, or you're thinking too much on the same stuff, and you're getting agitated because you're not getting an answer of what you really want, and you're overthinking. So I'll write a morning reflection, and then an evening, and then I'll write a summary of the day. And so when I think about the quote and the question, it really directs itself towards, am I processing things well? When I look at my summary, look at, how the day turned out. And a lot of times the quote and the question go hand in hand throughout the day. So it really is helpful.
Okay, we're going to go down this route a little more. So something we've talked about in here before is paralysis by analysis. So I consider this close to lamenting. How do I know that you say things aren't going my way? Well, how do I keep myself from going down this rabbit hole of thinking, and over worrying, over analyzing? What do I do?
Ask yourself, why are you worrying to begin with? That would be the first question. What has you agitated? So if your thought is not flowing, then it's okay, I'm not doing something by just my brain power. Now, how can I shift my mindset? I would tell you, go for a walk. You get your body moving, guess what? Your thoughts are not going to stay on just that part of paralysis. You're going to start to develop your brain waves are just going to start moving, because you're going to see sights, sounds, maybe temperature. It's going to change your environment. It's going to change your reaction to where you're at. So it gives you a mental break and thinking about something else, because once we start walking, when we start doing something else, it's like, look, let me put that on pause. Let me suspend that. I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go and do something completely else and stay on that. Now, some people, their emotions are too tied up because they feel something is right. But here's the thing, your emotions will lie to you. Your thoughts of your comfort will tie you down. They will weave a web around you that will keep you paralyzed if you let them. But if you get your body in motion and you work on other things, then guess what? You start freeing up mental space and you start processing better. So hopefully that answers your question.
Okay, man. Well, it could be that I just like to hear 7-2 talk and explain things, but no, it does. And I appreciate you breaking that down for us. Cause I think as we're going into month 12 tomorrow, and I bet there is things people in this room said they were going to do in 2022 that they have not done yet. So you got 30 days to do it. Tom, is there anything that you said you were going to start in 22 that you haven't started yet?
I don't know if there's anything that I said that I was going to start that I haven't started. There are definitely goals that I had that I didn't hit and that I'm not going to hit. But, again, like I've talked about before, I kind of feel like that's okay because I did work towards them. I just didn't quite get there. Right. And I think, not only is it okay to have sort of big audacious goals that are at best a coin flip whether or not you'll be able to accomplish. I actually think it's a good thing because it pushes you to work harder, to stretch yourself, to push yourself further than a very reasonably attainable goal would be, right? So I achieved some of my goals for this year. I didn't achieve all of them, but the good news is that gives me something to work towards next year, right? Already going into next year, I already have things that I can work towards. So, I'm kind of a silver lining guy, right? Like I think there's always an upside. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan of like the idea that failure is an opportunity for learning, right? Because it is, right? Every failure presents an opportunity, right? Every time you try something and do not succeed, you increase the likelihood that you'll succeed next time you try. I don't know that I have things that I didn't start this year. I might be able to think of a couple. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I started everything I planned on starting. I just don't have anything off the top of my head. But what popped into my mind is that I definitely have goals, specifically in my business, that I didn't accomplish this year. But that's good because then that gives me, I already have a goal built in for going into next year. And maybe I'll raise the bar on myself a little bit and push even further than I did this year. So there you go.
That's fair, Tom. And I like this idea of like, I used to be in pharmaceuticals and insurance. And every year when the managers set the goals or, corporate set the goals, they'd be like these goals that would be like 50 times higher than anybody in the whole company would ever hit. And you'd try to hit them. And then there'd be other marks along the way that you were like, oh, this is good. This is good. This is good. So every year, like when I set my own personal goals, I'm like, oh, I want to have X amount of clients this year. Or like this year, one of my goals, I said, I want to sell one of my screenplays this year. I didn't sell one of my screenplays this year. Now, I don't look at it as complete failure because I wrote other ones. I went back and edited those. I met more people, made more connections, spent more time working at Amazon and Netflix and Paramount, where a year ago I didn't have those connections. And now I've got more screenplays, more connections, and maybe it wasn't meant to be, but I don't look at it, but I keep moving everything else along that maybe I'm in a little better place. That when I always look at like, okay, if you ever get in the room to pitch or to sell and somebody's going to say, well, we hate this idea, then what? Do you have nothing more to give them? Like, oh, that was it. I'll see you later. No, I'm going to have so much material and content that we will go, that they'll be like, I never thought about this idea. Go on, Tom.
Well, I was just going to say, I think there is sort of a line, right? Or like a point of diminishing returns, I think, when it comes to setting big, crazy goals, right? Is that I think that goal, the big, crazy goal, should be something that in a perfect world is possible, right? If everything were to line up, if everything went perfectly, right? So I'll use myself as an example, right? So this Saturday, I'm running my first standalone marathon, right? So I've run a marathon as part of an Ironman race in the past, but I've never done one by itself where I'm just running the 26.2 miles, right? And so I have a goal. My goal is to run that marathon under 3 hours and 30 minutes. Now, I have another goal where if everything goes amazing for me, right, on Saturday, my goal is to Boston qualify, right? BQ is what they call it, which is a big deal in the running community. And in order to do that, I have to run under 3 hours and 20 minutes. Okay. So it's a big jump. I'm gonna go out with, there's a pace group at a 3 hour 25 pace. So I'm gonna go out with that group and I'm gonna evaluate as the day goes on. And if I feel really good as we get to sort of the halfway mark, I'm gonna start trying to speed up a little bit. Right. But everything has to go kind of perfect for me. I have to have a sort of perfect race day to hit that 320 mark. It is unlikely. It's possible, but it's unlikely, right? And so I think it's important to have those goals. Like my main goal is one that is I should be able to accomplish, and then I have sort of a further goal that I'm really working towards. That's the one I really want to accomplish, but I need everything to line up perfectly for me, right? So it's theoretically possible, but highly unlikely. And I think that's the sort of the magic sauce, right? The combination that you should look for in this kind of goal setting is like theoretically possible, but highly unlikely, right? So I just wanted to clarify that because I don't want people setting goals that are just completely ludicrous for themselves, right? And then being like, because then you easily fall into sort of defeat when you realize how far you are from that goal, right? And then the last thing I want to say is you just need to, I think you need to keep in mind that when you're trying to achieve big goals, you have to just take it one step at a time and chip away at accomplishing that goal. You're never going to do it all at once, right? It takes consistent work over time to accomplish change, to accomplish goals, right? And that's what I've done over the last, several months with my training. I literally just got back from a run like 3 minutes before we got on this podcast, right? So like I've been running. I've done, 60 miles in a week over the course of this training period. I've run a lot, but it's that consistent work over time that has made this goal possible for me, right? It's not, I didn't just wake up one day and go, I want to do that, and then threw on a pair of shoes and went out and tried to do it, right? So just remember, you have to do consistent work over time and be patient with yourself and give yourself grace to have good days and bad days on the road towards accomplishing that goal.
I think that's really important what you just said there, Tom, because it's the scale. The scale in your mind versus scale of reality. And if some people are so scaled in their mind, like, oh, but they have no consistency. It's a big thing. And so one of the important things that, I suggest to people when you're making a goal is in addition to you to make an improvement for the change that you really want to exist. Second, is it a goal for achievement because it's worth a challenge to push yourself? And that's very, very important. Or is it a goal just in theory? And I think many of us can get stuck in goal of theory. We haven't thought it out. We didn't think about the results. What was it going to really do for us in the longevity of things? It just sounded kind of like when people start New Year's resolutions. They fail because they really didn't want it to exist. They just thought, this is the program. My nature is to make a goal for New Year's resolution. So my nature is to say that. But if I didn't nurture it by doing that daily work, then guess what? It's just another thought. I spent more money on things that don't belong to me. And now I feel self-defeated. So I think that was a brilliant point, Tom.
Look at that, Tom. Brilliant. No, look, it's not the smartest guys in the room, and somebody is calling Tom brilliant. So What do we say about that?
I will take it. Even not the smartest guy occasionally says something that other people would call brilliant. So
Hey,
I'm not taking that as a comment on my overall me overall. Just that one thing I said.
Now we do have, look at this murderer's row of smart people. We got Prof T, we got Brian P. Swift. I know Brian and Julie both went to law school, and Elizabeth and Prof
as
T.
well as I.
Okay, and 7-2 and Elizabeth and Prof T both wrote books. Oh my goodness. Prof T. So here a couple things on. We got the end of the year, anything you're gonna go hard to try to hit. And then the other thing I wanted to know in 22, because we're 11 months, 12 months in now, going on tomorrow, is there any must-haves, things that you did this year that the rest of us better jump on because you're like, man, I love this or it works. So if you don't mind sharing, go on, Prof T.
Good morning. Hello, everybody. Hi, Jason. Good to see you again. Tom, brilliant Tom, and Dominick, my friend Julie, Brian, Elizabeth. Good to see you. So, oh wow, there's just power-packed couple of minutes there going on. Yeah, my name's Teresa Augustinelli, otherwise known as Prof T from Philly, where it's a little chilly. It's raining. It's one of those days, you guys. Talk about goals. I'm trying to get myself in gear here. So for 2022, well, I would have to say my book was published. So that's a must do. I mean, if you have a story, which we all do, and you have a book burning in your belly, I would definitely say get on the crash course or something, or hire somebody like Julie or somebody that can help you get your book published or point you in the right direction. Writing a book changed my life. Um, Not because of me, but because of what it brought out in me, the discipline it developed in me, and listen, it wasn't easy. So I'm a big proponent for writing a book. It doesn't have to be a gigantic book. So I'm just going to say that. That was one thing I would encourage people to try to do. As far as 2023, well, we're winding down this year. So I met with one of my coaches yesterday. I can't stress this enough, you guys and girls. Hire people to help you get to where you need to go. You can't do it by yourself. And that's what my book's about. So I'm going to just use the rest of this year to just meet people and not so much focus on getting business or being so staunch. I'm just going to relax and meet people, do my normal networking, um, connecting with people, go through my Rolodex of resources and check in on people, see how they're doing, if they, if they want to have a cup of coffee. Just doing the people to people thing, I think for me is what I'm going to do. And then for 2023, this is what I'm focusing on. Um, Podcast. I'm getting on podcasts because nowadays, with all of the issues going on with COVID and illnesses, and people are still a little funny about going in public, doing things person to person. So I'm going to be looking into some podcasts, which I've been invited on podcasts all year, and I'm getting invited for more. So that's that. But this is what I wanted to say about goals. I think somebody said it. You're never going to get it all done, and you're never going to get it all right. It is consistency is key. Persistence is key, and that's what my grid system is. Just getting honest where you are, where do you need to be, and release. Maybe you got to release some old goals. Maybe you got to release some things that aren't serving anymore. You got to incorporate some new things. And then the AI is definitely invest in yourself. You got to invest in yourself, your self-care, your team. Who's your team? Look at who your team is. Do you need to take an extra course? Do you need to go back to school and get a degree in something to get you to the next level? And then the D is to develop the discipline. You can't just say, I'm going to just do this for today. And we don't eat once a month, right? We eat daily. It goes to the same precedence about feeding your mind and changing your mindset. So with that said, I think I'm going to pass the mic. I hate hogging the mic. Thanks for this opportunity. And I'll leave with this. Never, ever underestimate the power that you have within yourself to do and be and have everything you were created for. It's doable. Thanks.
Prof T, you're nailing it today as always. So we appreciate you, and I like this idea of uh, letting things go too as we get to month 12 here. I wonder how many things that, like, you could change goals along the way, like you said, and I wonder how many things that we're holding on to that didn't serve us this year as well, or the past couple of years. So that's something that we should look at in our business and things. So the top, not the smartest guys in the room. Welcome everybody. Brian, Julie, Elizabeth, Elsie, Dr. Tachi. What's going on? Anybody that wants to wave their hand up below, we try to call you up. If you want to come up, please do. If not, hang out. We love having you in the room too. So let's see here. We are to my Stephanie Kunkel. What's going on, Stephanie? Let's see here. Okay, don't mind me. I'm reading. I'm looking at these notes here, so I get confused. Okay, so we have, my man, Brian P. Swift. What's up, brother?
Hello, Dominick and Tom and 72, Julie, Prof T, and the rest of the gang. Thanks for having me up. Oh, goals. Progress, not perfection. I think that's key to keep in the back of your mind. If your goals don't scare you, they're probably not lofty enough. And I think the importance of achieving those goals are celebrating some of the little steps. So Tom didn't start out running marathons. Tom started out running a distance. And my guess is he started out with a sprint marathon and then moved to a bigger marathon and then a bigger marathon and whatnot, and celebrated those wins. So I think celebrating little victories, even though maybe you don't get to where you want to go, is key, because it's proof that you can do what you set your mind at. I agree that consistency and discipline are so important, extremely important. And I'm a big believer in setting new goals before the beginning of the year. I know it's cliche to have resolutions. I've done it my whole life, but I started to try to set them between Thanksgiving and Christmas, and set out to start before the year gets started. It's my way of kind of cheating the new year and getting started early. I'm complete. Thank you.
Swift, you sound great, man. And the inspiration, motivation, I'm feeling it. And good. Prof T mentioned write a book, and Brian's written a few and has a new one coming out real soon, Developing True Grit. So make sure you follow this stud, Brian P. Swift. Yeah, Prof T gave you a heart, Brian. Look at that.
I am blessed. Yes, one of my goals this year was to finish a book I started definitely last year, and get it published this year. And I think we're going to be close. It is about I'll call it a characteristic that you can't learn anywhere in school, in any institution, and it's something you can't be taught by somebody else. But I believe it is one of the biggest factors in people's success, and that is true grit. So that's the book that I have written, and we're just doing some cleanup and finalizing, and I'm hoping it comes out in a couple weeks. Thanks, Tom. I'm complete.
Hey, pretty cool, brother. Not the smartest guys in the room. That's what we called it. You guys, like, you contribute each week to what we do here. So we had a show that was just, or a room that was just keywords. And then my friend Julie said, you might be getting shadow banned because you have Clubhouse in the name of the rooms. And hey, we are admittedly not the smartest guys in the room. So what worked a year ago when we put Clubhouse in the title of the room, well, a year later, it might be silly and dumb to have it there. Who knows? But Julie, our friend, Prof T, talked about writing a book. You wrote a book this year. I'm all over the media casters content that you're putting out. What is something in 22 that you did, you had success with it, and we should all follow Julie, the Pied Piper, and do that as well.
It's a lot of pressure here. So make sure you invite people while I'm talking. Everybody, 13 people, let's see, 7 shares. So let's share the room for the Dom and Tom show. But quite honestly, as I was listening to the conversation, Brian, Prof T, Jason, 7/72, what I became reflective because I haven't really done an inventory on my year, but what I know going into 2022, I make a word or a word for the year. And this year was fearless. And that was my word. And looking back now, I had a huge, I know you might not believe me, but it's true. I have a huge fear of public speaking, paralyzing in terms of getting on stages in person. And I told myself, I'm going to do it this year, whether I like it or not. It's holding me back because everything we dream of is on that other side of fear, is on that piece of poop that we are so scared of or think is our Achilles heel. Walking through it is amazing. So I ended up taking a lot of risks in terms of speaking on stages and strategic partnerships, putting myself out there. I can't even believe the way my business has changed. I stopped using fear as an excuse. So that was really huge for me. So just think about it. What is it that you're not doing? Stop doing the small stuff, like the minutia, if you will. Stop doing the busy stuff and free yourself up for the big vision for your life, whatever that may be. And I've heard this from wonderful people. We get caught up, right, Dom, in like the small, like little stuff. Like I don't even know how much time I waste, like looking at emails or blah blah blah. Start thinking about the big stuff. Do what scares you, and open yourself up to new possibilities and take risks, calculated risks. Thank you. And I drop my mic.
Julie, thank you. And let me double back on something you said, because we've been in this virtual world a couple of years because of COVID and things like that. And there is this return to in-person events and things like that. So what advice would you give as somebody who was scared to step on a stage or something like that, or had a little anxiety about it, that has now done it and is doing it and has seen her business increase because of it?
I mean, it's easy to talk on Clubhouse because it's not easy, but it's easy to just get up and talk. We all do it. But really feeling the energy of another room, and I'm talking like debilitating. I know I've shared the story about me like mentally blacking out when I was arguing in a federal case in court. And I was like, I am never doing this again. So I made the commitment never to speak in public again. But as an entrepreneur, as the leader of my brand, I have to be out there. So just doing it, bringing someone with you, or you got to get out of your own head, at least with speaking. You think everyone cares about you. No one's going to remember you in 20 minutes. Yes, you want to be memorable, but no one really cares that much about you. You have to remember the mission of why you're going out there and speaking, and have someone teach you how to speak. A lot of people don't know how to speak. The ums, the uhs, the fidgeting, the body posture, that helps out a lot, gives you confidence, and be really clear on what you're speaking about. If you're an expert on it, it should just roll off the tongue. What I realized is I can't read a speech. I have to just be in the moment and speak. I have talking points, but that's it. I just feel the energy and go. And it's been the most amazing experience. And I'm lined up to speak a few more times in the next couple months, but it's so energizing, and it's kind of like an adrenaline rush, if you will. So get the training, bring someone you're comfortable with if you're that nervous, and just do it. Nobody cares that much about you. Sorry. People care about Dom and Tom, but just nobody really cares that much about you, I guess, is the best advice I can give. And throw your baby out. Also, that's my other advice.
And don't feel bad about that. No, nobody cares about you. Dale Carnegie, he had a book, How to Stop Worrying. This is 100 years ago. And in this book, How to Stop Worrying, Dale Carnegie, one of the founders of inspiration and motivation and getting along with other people and influencing people and stuff like that, he says people will care more about their own headache than if you die. And this is Carnegie saying it, not me. But to think that we're so worried about what everybody else has going, what everybody else thinks about us, and really they're thinking, I'm 5 minutes late. I got to pick my kid up. I'm looking at myself on the camera. Is my part right in my hair? And we're thinking, hey, do you ever hear like when you're speaking, like right now, the person that's probably not listening is the next person to go because they're worried about what they're going to talk about. So Julie, I think you nailed it. Tom, seemed like you wanted to add something. Go on.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in that I think it's really important to remember that, yes, people don't care about you as much as you care about you, right? Because they care about themselves as much as you care about you, right? So it's important to remember that. It's also important to remember that you are always going to be more critical of yourself than others will be. People will always be less critical of you because they see you as a human being, and it's good to actually give them the opportunity to identify with you by including a little bit of your flaws, right? And so I encourage people, while it's good to be able to speak without relying on ums and ands and uhs to fill space as you try to gather your thoughts, it's good to not rely on those. It's okay to say them sometimes. You don't try to speak without any natural inflection, without using any idioms, without any sort of idiosyncrasies of your normal speech. Don't try to make yourself into a robot that never uses an or an and or an because people won't be able to identify with you. They won't see themselves in you, and they won't empathize with you, and they won't actually listen to what you're trying to say. So just
I agree
remember,
so much, Tom. Like it's that connection of using that vulnerability and share with your audience. Oh gosh, this,
yeah,
I'm really nervous. People get it. People get it.
yeah, yeah. And it's a great thing too when you walk out in front of a group of people. I found, and I'm not the guy that came up with this move or this technique, right? But I like when you walk out in front of a group of people and they're really excited to be there, I talk about how exciting it is to be there, right? I tap into that excitement in the room, right? I tap into that anticipation. I say it out loud because people look around and go, yeah, it is really exciting to be here, right? And all of a sudden they're with you, right? And they know you're with them. And now you're having a conversation rather than just talking at them, right? So yeah, just a little thing I like to do. I always like to sort of put myself on the same level as the audience as quickly as possible, because it just makes the whole thing go easier and it feels more natural. It feels more like a conversation. And I like to ask audiences questions and raise your hands and clap if you think this and stuff like that. Just get them involved. Anyway, I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole, but yeah, I just wanted to say, like, remember, you are more critical of you than anybody else. So give yourself a little grace.
Go on. Jason, do you want to add something there?
I agree with both Julie and Tom. And people complain about the radioactiveness of people's reactions. So it's kind of like when people are unsure of saying something and they don't have that confidence to just like let it fly. It's kind of like playing a game of peekaboo. Like, is it okay? Is it safe? Or am I going to get my head knocked off? And people constantly worry about how I'll be honest. I can't stand the people who say, well, it's all about how you say it. No, if you didn't hear the message, your sensitivity is the problem, not me. So, as an attorney, there's things that I'll tell people, my clients, that will say exactly like, look, this may not be convenient for you. This may not be really safe emotionally for you. Like when people say like this is a safe space, those are the most toxic people I've ever come across. Because if you have to say it's a safe space, in my opinion, it means you're not, you're just you're kind of afraid of what may come into play. But if you take and say, hey, I'm speaking on this position, this is my opinion, the natural order of things is they're either going to accept it or not. And so it goes back to people really don't give a shit, so they only care about their self-interests, their points of their self-interest to what you say. And if there's none, then why take offense to it? So it really boils down to that. I mean, that's my position. People may argue with it all they want, but that's what it relates to me. And do I take offense sometimes? Yeah, it's human. Do I don't most of the time? Yeah. I mean, I could blame it on being neurodiverse and saying I have Asperger's, but that's my superpower. So I just kind of like, look, I can talk to certain people like Julie, or I can talk to you, Dominic, or I can talk to Brian. I can listen to Dr. Tachi, because if they say it exactly as they know it, then I'm learning and I'm collaborating. And then there's no disparage of how to take an emotional position when there doesn't need to be one. So I just want to say that.
I'd love to add to that thought if I could. This is Elise. Because I think that to your point, there is a great deal of value that comes from being able to communicate authentically, even if it's not as tactful or graceful as it could be. That said, I'd love to just introduce maybe just a different angle of what you were saying, particularly when it comes to that concept of a safe space. And I definitely know what you're talking about. I've been in rooms and conversations with people who, will say this is a safe space, and then 20 minutes later they'll use whatever vulnerability against you, while still claiming it's a safe space. But to be able to communicate authentically, as you mentioned, the truth, while also being conscious of how the truth may impact those who are listening, is kind of like striking that balance between the raw and harsh truth, which sometimes it's important to be delivered in that form, but also creating an environment where people are open enough to be able to receive that truth and then actually integrate and apply it. And I think Clubhouse is such an interesting breeding ground for both extremes that it's almost like a fascinating social study, if you will. And I think where I have been able to gain the most tangible and meaningful information and wisdom in rooms and conversations, on Clubhouse and in person, is where there's truth, but it is communicated in a way that I am able to receive it. So sometimes when we are in environments that are nothing but the raw and harsh and gritty truth, we may not always be able to receive it in a way that we're able to apply it. So it's just making those small, slight changes depending on the person, depending on the truth, depending on the environment, so that you're able to communicate with somebody in a way that they can actually receive it. And that is an art and a science. And I am hard pressed to find anybody who has fully perfected it, but it is definitely something I think we all get better at. And it sounds like I am in a room of people who certainly understand that art and that science. So it's great to be in such good company. I'm complete. Thank you.
Brian, I saw you click on. Did you have something you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, I believe at least part of what you're talking about, and I agree with you, is knowing your audience. And I think it's important to know your audience, because you could talk to, you may need to deliver the same message different ways to different people. And that's, I think, very mindful to do if you're talking to a single person or maybe a couple people. I think when you're talking to a large group, being authentic definitely helps, because you can't control the way each person is going to take your message. But I agree overall. Thanks so much. I'm complete.
Thanks, Brian. Love that. And yeah, I think, what I was thinking about listening to what you were saying, Elise, was that you really have to remember, whether you're in a one-on-one conversation or in a group dynamic, or you're speaking up on a stage in front of hundreds or thousands of people, you're there when you're working towards delivering a message, when you're trying to get a point across. You have to remember that it's all about your audience, right? It's not about you. You already get the point, right? You already know the point. You've internalized what you're trying to say. You understand it, you appreciate it, you believe in it, etc. You're there for your audience to help them, right, understand what you already understand. And whether that's an audience of 1 or 5 or 500, the approach is, relatively speaking, the same, right? That you have to, in that way, that you have to remember that you're there for them, right? That you're there to help them, not to help yourself. You already get it, right? You're already done. You got to help your audience get there too. And so, yeah, I think that's a super important important thing to remember whenever you're speaking and whenever you're trying to make a point, right, or share a perspective with somebody, that you have to meet them where they are, that you're there for them, right? What do you think, Dom? I know you've done a lot of speaking.
And I'm interested in the point. I wanted to bring up one of my authors, Joel Holk. He used to say that the person you are speaking to, they're not seeing the world through your eyes or the story through your eyes. They're putting themselves into your story and thinking, how would I react in this story? How is this like my life? How is this like when I was a little kid? What was I scared of? And then that's how they are interpreting your story. I did want to go back to a Lincoln quote. I'm a fan of Lincoln, and Lincoln said, if you want to be a good speaker, before you get up on stage, get punched in the nose. And his belief was that if you were passionate about something, that then you would be a good speaker on. So I would wonder, if we whittled down, if I got you to talk about your favorite thing, whatever that is. If, in my case, maybe I'd talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers or whatever. I wonder if you were talking about your favorite thing, whatever subject it was. If Julie got up on stage, when Julie said she was afraid earlier, if I got her talking about, is it a French bulldog do you have? What kind of dog is that, Julie? Well, Julie has the cutest dog. She does TikToks on with this little dog all the time. So I would think if she could get up there, you know what kind of dog it is, Prof T?
Yeah, it's a French bulldog. Cute
Okay.
little thing. She's got
Yeah.
2 now.
Okay, see, so if you found somebody that was super passionate and you get up on stage and talk about French bulldogs, or that, and you asked me about my speaking, Tom. I used to speak on bullying once in a while. I have my approach when I wasn't on stage. I would tell my own children, I would say, turn your cheek, warn them. If somebody was messing with my children, this is the message that I shared, not the message I could share on stage. Turn your cheek. Jesus turned his cheek. I'm like, okay, so that's probably a good idea. Warn them. So the second time they mess with you, warn them. And the third time, fight like hell. And this is your dad. This is dad telling my kids, that was my advice on bullying. When I got up on stage and got paid to speak about bullying, that wasn't a message I could give. So my message wasn't sincere. I did not love speaking on bullying. I no longer speak on bullying. It wasn't for me. So you find out the things that you like to talk about, that you don't like, that you're good at, and chase those things that you're passionate about. Okay, our next speaker, guest, profile, thumbnail picture is our friend Elizabeth, and she is passionate about travel. So we were talking about, you heard the conversation, so I don't need to tell you what's going on. You can jump in wherever you want. Go on, my friend.
Hi, Dominic. Hi, everyone. I haven't been here for a very, very long time, and I've just been very busy. And I loved what Julie said about not being able to read on stage. I do a lot of public speaking. I am actually the regional director of the Global Women Club Cyprus. And our motto is, if you want to empower a woman, give her a microphone. So public speaking empowers people. It gives you a lot of confidence. And it's all about practice. And I think one thing that Julie said, she doesn't like to read, and good for you, because there is nothing worse than watching people read their PowerPoint presentations. I always feel like saying, why didn't you just distribute it? We could have read it ourselves. It really is. And I think public speaking is also showing your vulnerability, making fun of yourself. That makes people laugh. Because if you are in a conference or in a room with, like, I don't know, 20 people, and everybody talks for 20 minutes, no one is going to remember in the evening what you talked about, but they are going to remember how you talked about it. And if you made them laugh, and if you showed vulnerability, or if you showed kindness, and if you looked at people, I always like to find a person. If I'm in a room with people that I know, obviously I find somebody that I like, and they become my person that I speak to. And then if there is nobody in there that I know, I find somebody nice. And I think public speaking is a lot of fun. And you're right, it's important what you talk about. It's difficult to talk about something that you don't like, but I could talk for hours and hours about travel. And I've actually, Dominick, you were my podcast guest. I've uploaded episode 93 this week. And yeah, I mean, that's my part of public speaking is great. I love to speak on stage. I really do. And I have a lot of practice. I was a tour guide when I was young. So I started public speaking when I was 20 years old, and I was terrified. And I remember being in the front of the bus and the microphone would hit my chin because I was so stressed. But it's practice. Just do it, just go ahead and do it. And, get out of your comfort zone and find something that you like to speak about. And yeah, I'm done speaking.
Elizabeth, great advice, and I'm glad you're back. It warms my soul to see you anytime you stop by. Please do, because we love having you. And let's go down that practice. So many times I'll have an author come to me and they'll be like, well, I'm like, where do you want to go with this book? Why do you want to do it? What are you going to do? I want to speak on stages. I want to get paid big bucks to speak on stages. Have you ever done it before? No. Well, who's going to pay you when you haven't done it before? How long do you have a presentation? Do you know what you're going to talk about? No. Okay, so hold on here. You're just going to get up on stage. People are going to pay you thousands of dollars, and you don't know what you're going to talk about, and you've never done it before. Why would, in no other field, you wouldn't go try to be a doctor and say, I've never done it before. You wouldn't go try to play baseball or cook hamburgers or anything and say, if you've never done it before, you have to practice. So I'm a big believer in, even if it's free early on, the Rotaries, the chambers, the women's groups, the retiree groups, all those people are looking for speakers monthly. When I started to get paid doing speeches and people wanted me to do free speeches, I'd say, well, I can do a half hour for you, or I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. So sometimes I'd go to the young men's road, like they'd have a new young men's business group or whatever that met at night, and they'd be a little rowdier. And I'd say, well, I'm going to talk about whatever I want to talk about. And I would get up on stage and try new stories. And I remember I had this story about The Rock being better than you. And like some of them stunk, and I'd watch people like see their faces turn, and I'm like, oh, this story's no good. But it was me practicing. And then when I was in those rooms, one time I told a story about Oscar Pistorius, and Oscar Pistorius was the Olympian who had he was a runner that ran with no legs and made the Olympics. What a motivational story, I thought, until somebody from across the room yelled that he murdered his girlfriend or wife or whatever it was. And in the middle of my speech, two people started fighting because another guy was like, hey, he's here to speak, leave him alone. And there's this big like melee. And I realized that is a subject I'm never going to bring up again. So I learned in one of my free events not to talk about that again. Sometimes when I was getting paid, I brought up a story and it was about throwing chicken wings out the window and living for the moment. And I could see these ladies that were more mature seniors in the front couple rows. They did not like my story, and I didn't know my room. And that was a bad story to tell. So I learned. So practice, practice, practice. Dr. Tachi knows all about practice, knows all about media. So Dr. Tachi, where you weigh in on all this?
Hey, good morning. Did we skip Elise or she already went?
Elise, she jumped in. She can, Elise, you want to do your thing or you want to, whatever Elise wants. Go on, Dr. Tachi.
Okay. Well, it looks like she's going to wait. Well, good morning, everyone. It's good to be back in the room. So, two things, Dominic, what you said resonated definitely about reading your room and knowing your audience. It also comes with researching, like if you're going to use a story, probably research to make sure that that's the type of individual you want to highlight, because sometimes you just don't know. And like you didn't know, and these things happen, and it's like, ooh, all right. Well, if something happens after you use them as an example, well, that can't be helped. But going forward, then you know, okay, this probably does not resonate with the message that I want to deliver. And then number two, where we talked about so eloquently, both Julie and Elizabeth talked about the whole thing of not reading. This is why, and I'll say this again. Yes, I'm saying it again. This is why I don't like teleprompters. So there are so many people who will, I shouldn't say so many, but there are some people who feel they need to have their quote speech written out somewhere so that not only don't they forget, but that it goes smooth. Well, to Tom's point, it's not natural not to have little uhs and ums and things in your normal everyday speech. So if you want to sound conversational, it's okay definitely to have that. It doesn't mean your speech or whatever you're saying should be riddled with them, but it's okay to sound natural, and that sounds natural. Teleprompterness, and that, no, it's not a word, I made it one. Teleprompterness does not sound natural. On top of it, we can see your eyes moving as if you're reading. It takes a lot of practice to be natural and to use a teleprompter well. And even people that are professionals, you can still tell that they're reading in some sort of way. Now, that's a convention for news, right? That's a convention for presenting, and that's okay. Well, presenting awards and things, right? That's a convention there. It's almost a crutch, or it can be a crutch not to forget. So the better thing is preparation. What is the extemporaneous speaking is practice and prepared without memorization. Sometimes you don't have the luxury of doing it, but when you can, I would much rather have you use notes. And that's the thing. People think that they can't use notes. Why not? Who said that? Who told you can't use notes? You could write down bullet points to help clue you into what you're going to say next. Even with a PowerPoint, the rule is you really are supposed to only have about 6 lines of text per slide. And those should just be to clue you in to what you're going to further and more fully explain to your audience, not to read. So, because if you have a PowerPoint, for example, and you have everything on there, the tendency is to read. So don't put things in front of you that are going to make you use them as a crutch. So yeah, don't put too much on your slides for PowerPoint, and no teleprompters if you can help it. And with that, I release the mic.
Okay, Dom saw me flashing and gave me the green light to hop in. So, yes, exactly, Dr. Tachi. Thank you so much for saying that. Please, I get this question, especially like from corporate clients, business clients. They want to create some content for their brand or their business, and they want us to write a script and then put it up on a teleprompter for them to read. And I always just say no. Right. And the reason I say no, and people are like, you say no to your clients? I say no to my clients probably more often than I say yes to my clients. But I say no to my clients about this because it is a very specific skill set to be able to read off of a teleprompter and not have it sound like you're reading off of a teleprompter. There's a couple of tricks to it. One is tons and tons of practice. Lots of reading out loud to people with inflection, adding life to the characters and the words on the page and what you're saying. The other is creating space in between the sentences that you read and adding in some little extemporaneous commentary that's not on the page. Adding in little bits of things that pop into your head, allowing yourself to use normal modes of speech while you're reading. And doing that, you can actually make something that's read off a teleprompter sound as if it is off the cuff. So you can do it, but it takes a ton of practice. Okay. And I would always encourage too, I think somebody, I don't remember who said this to me. I heard somebody say one time, do you know what PowerPoint slides are in a presentation? And I said, no. And they said, it's the speaker's notes. They're for the speaker. They're not for the audience, right? So bullet points on your slides. I like to use literally not even a sentence, a phrase. I will have, like, when I do a presentation with slides, I will literally have like a 4-word phrase on the slide, and that's just big letters up on the wall, and then I expound on that, right? So just remember that those notes are for you and not for the audience. And if you ever get up to do a presentation and you find yourself reading your PowerPoint slides, actually, no, let me rewind that. If you practice a presentation and you find yourself reading your PowerPoint slides, delete the text from them and just put images on them instead. Right? Unless it's a phrase. But I think that's kind of what I mix up is I'll often have an image that evokes what I'm talking about, and sometimes a phrase with that image, sometimes just a phrase, sometimes just an image. But I never have a full sentence on a PowerPoint slide in a presentation, in a live speech that I'm doing, because I don't want to read them, and nobody's paying me to stand up there and read out loud to them. It's not bedtime, right? I'm trying to deliver a message, right? I'm not reading a bedtime story. So yeah, so just something to remember. Plus, it's a bunch of adults. They don't want to hear a bedtime story from you.
Elise, go ahead.
I'd love to add to that because I, especially coming from the finance world where a lot of the PowerPoint presentations that we have to put together and create are then distributed for reference. Some of those rules we end up having to break because of the nature of how those PowerPoints are going to be utilized in the future. And I am notoriously known for scripting all of my PowerPoints in a conversational style and then practicing them so much so that when I get into the presentation, I'm having a conversation as opposed to sounding like I'm scripted. But I am one of those people who does do that pre-scripting work beforehand, and I have found that to be incredibly helpful. So just to kind of add a little extra flavor to some of the recommendations here, I think, Tom, you said it really well. If one is to script in preparation for giving any kind of presentation, it really is only going to be beneficial if, first and foremost, you script it in a conversational way. So instead of writing like an expose on what you'd like to say, write it as if you're having a conversation, and then practicing it enough beforehand so that you're not reading it, but you're actually able to recite it in a conversational way. And then in terms of building out a PowerPoint, Tom, you made a really good point about, using as few words as possible. And if I could also infuse that with some additional thoughts, depending on how that actual document is going to be used in the future, take that into consideration as well. So coming from like a financial standpoint, whenever we're putting together a presentation that is going to talk a little bit about, what the finances are of a particular initiative, what the recommendation is, what the business case is, we have to get very creative about how we space and format and incorporate words and sentences so that it's not overwhelming, but that it can then be referred to by people who were not in the room for that presentation. So definitely a tricky one, striking that balance. But I just wanted to add that I am so notoriously guilty of scripting almost all of my presentations. And one of the ways that I have been able to overcome that that potential of coming across as stiff when I actually give the presentation is just by running through it and practicing and speaking it out loud, so that it becomes conversational. But it just made me laugh when you were talking about how scripting can be a crutch, because I know that crutch well, and sometimes it can be helpful if done right. I'm complete.
May I add for a moment,
Please,
Dom?
Dr. Tachi, go on.
No, you know what, Elise, I don't think you're using it as a crutch, because what you're doing is knowing that you have to deliver this information, and it needs to be done so in a way that will be informative, but also engage them. I know the purpose is maybe not to engage them, but you also want to keep them with you so that it doesn't sound stodgy and like you're doing it, but you have that delicate balance. So I think, that's definitely a case for when that needs to be done. And there are other cases. From teaching public speaking and seeing how the average person, I'm sorry to say, is not interested in practicing enough so that they get to the point you are at. That's the thing. You have to make that, you've made that your mission, and you do that every single time. And there are people who do that. But from what I've seen, they have not. And I don't want to make a blanket case. There are some people who don't want to do that. They just want to have everything down so that they can read it, and it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be because they are nervous, they are apprehensive, and feel that they need a crutch. So in that case, more work is needed to do that. But if you're speaking, especially, and it depends what you're speaking about. If you're speaking to inspire, most people are not going to be inspired by someone who's reading. So you're absolutely right. I think it really is dependent upon the case. I'm complete.
Guys, I'm loving this room, and so we're going to keep it rolling. I wanted to touch on that. Elise, my wife is in finance too, and I see the slides she makes, global finance. I see these slides, and they got 100 ups and downs and greens and reds and so many numbers on them. I'm like, who the heck could even read this thing? And they're like, well, we got to talk to page 70 of this slide. I'm like, what is going on there? But I wanted to point out that sometimes, here's a little trick for you guys. And sometimes, like Tom says, you got this, you have 4 points, you have your phrase on your slide or something like that. You have your phrase on your note card, whatever. I think you should be able to do that. This is going to blow your mind here. If you have a speech in your basic whatever presentation you're going to give, if it's Dr. Tachi on media or Tom on legendeering or something, you should be able to give that speech in 30 seconds. You should be able to give that speech in 1 minute. You should be able to give that speech in 20 minutes. You should be able to give that speech in an hour. Well, how the heck could I give the same speech in an hour that I gave in 20 minutes? Well, because you have the core 4 points you need to hit, 3 points you need to hit, those things that were up on the screen, but you could add stories. I know if I need to make that an hour and a half, well, then for each of these 5 points, I'm going to need to add a story here, story here, story here, story here, and then I would know which stories I'm going to add. And for an hour and a half, I'm going to say, well, I need to have 3. And then what's interesting is you guys point back to the slide. If you are placekeeping on that slide and if you write everything down on that slide, you're screwed if time gets off. Sorry for my language. If all of a sudden you have an hour and all of a sudden you wrote everything down on that slide, well, I'm just jumping ahead a whole slide or 5 points on this slide. But if you can move it faster at some points, well, you could tackle that point, like I said, in a minute. Okay, well, I dropped these stories because I'm running out of time. I glanced up at the clock. I got an hour here, so I need to speed this up. I'm going to drop this point, add this story here. So, okay, we can go down this route all day long here. So I appreciate each of you. You are bringing it today. One of my dear friends, Stephanie, she's doing performances. What would you call it? Performances, coaching all the time. So, Stephanie, you got any tips for us? How are you doing? Missed you, my friend.
Missed you too. I'm glad to be back. I quit my day job before I went on vacation and then took a 2-day vacation. And
Hey, can we
so
clap? Hold on. Let's clap up for people that say, I want to quit my day job and I actually did it at some point. Clap. Oh, look. Stephanie, continue.
Yeah, so I actually am stepping into the public speaking realm. So this has been a great discussion for me. When I was in school, you were taught like you write out your speech and then you memorize it and then you deliver it. And I was never that person. I could never write out a speech and then deliver it. And anytime teleprompters, notes that have, what I'm supposed to say in them, I can't use them because if I miss a word or whatnot, it trips me up. And so I'll write it out if I feel so inclined to, but I never follow what's on the slides. And I'm a firm believer that I don't talk to anything that I don't fully understand. I shouldn't be presenting a slideshow unless I can talk about it without the slideshow. To your point, though, Dom, I do find myself a lot of times when I'm delivering talks because that subject is so well rounded. I talk a lot about mental health and leadership, and those things tie in so much together that when I'm having those conversations and I'm speaking to an audience, if I do have a slideshow, I tend to find that I will discuss things on the first 5 slides that encompass the latter half of the slide deck. And then by the time we get to those slide decks, I'm like, yep, I am beating a dead horse now. So let me skip through these slides. So it's just, I think it's about being prepared. It's about knowing your subject matter, and it's about not using the slides as a crutch, but as a tool to make sure that you're not forgetting things, that you're staying on track. And I want to go back to something that Tom said when we first started, and that is, you deliver as yourself. I think, when I first started public speaking, I was doing so in a way where it was like, okay, I've got to get this right. And I was so nervous and so just apprehensive about what other people would think about that, which we could go into the psychology about how we're naturally ingrained to do that because as we developed as human beings, community was a big part of who we are, right? So we're naturally inclined to not mess up so we don't get ostracized. But, we get into that mode where we're so worried about messing up that we forget to be who we are. And, Dominic, I think one of the reasons why you and I get along so well and why I was so drawn to you when I decided to publish was because you talk about telling your story. Like my story is unique, and while it's unique, it helps me to relate to other people. And there was a time period over the past year where I was really worried that if I came out of my depression, if I was not in the thick of it, that I wouldn't be able to relate to people, that I wouldn't be able to tell my story authentically and feel like I could still relate to people who were experiencing depression or anxiety, and how can I get them the help that they need if they can't relate to me? And I found my way around that, but it's really just been about being authentic. And we talked about the mission, staying true to the mission, making sure that you have a mission, whatever you're going to speak about, whatever that central core message is, that's the important part of what you're speaking about. It's not about the slides. It's not about, really even about the delivery, as we talked about earlier. It's about knowing what the mission is and knowing what that central core statement, what is it, that one takeaway that they want to take away from that presentation?
I love that, Stephanie. And this is Elise. I'm sorry. I just want to add something about what you just mentioned, because I think it is so strong. You just said you used to be afraid that if you came out of your depression, you wouldn't be able to relate to people. And it made me think of something that I want to share with you in the room, because it's really powerful. And I think it probably is something that may resonate with you and maybe anybody else in the room. I used to feel very uncomfortable when people would ask me things like, why you smile all the time? What makes you so happy? Why are you so happy? And I didn't really know how to respond. And I have recently found a great way to respond, and it has helped me bridge that gap. And I think, Stephanie, you touched on it really, really nicely. And this is why I want to share this with you. Now, when somebody says that to me, when I'm happy, I look them straight in the eye and I say, because I've had a lot of pain and every smile has been hard earned and hard won. And usually that helps me maintain that level of joy while also being able to relate with people. Because I think sometimes people make the mistake when they see somebody who is very happy that that person has never suffered and that person has never experienced trials or tribulations, and therefore they must be lucky and I can't relate to them. But if you are authentic and respond to people who greet your joy with suspicion, you will quickly remind them that your smile comes from hard work and you've earned the right to smile. And I'm just so happy that you said what you said, Stephanie. And I hope that sharing that helps you know that you are so on track. But such a beautiful share. And I didn't mean to take the conversation off track. I just wanted to share that with you, Stephanie. And congratulations on quitting your day job. I'm complete. Thank you.
Thanks,
Elise,
Elise.
go on, Steph.
I'm going to just jump in and just say thank you for sharing that, because I think, that's where I come from now, is a place where understanding that even though I'm in a happier space, and I can fully say that, like, I call it remission, because with the way that depression works is sometimes it comes back, right? So I feel like I'm in full remission, and things are in a good place right now. But I do feel like I can still connect to other people because of exactly what you said. So I appreciate that share. I'm going to have to drop off here in just a few minutes, but this has been a great room. Thank you all for all of your insights and sharing. Dominic, as always, thank you for hosting, and appreciate you and everything you do.
Stephanie, thank you. And you educated me as far as mental health and speaking along the way, where you said, well, what do I do when some days I can't show up because I'm in this space or I'm going through this? And that was something I had never thought of or understood. And you helped me. Like you used the term, she was managing depression. So thank you, Stephanie. Prof T, you wanted to add something. Go ahead.
Hey, yep, thanks. Um, so I just wanted to share logistically regarding speaking. Many of you may or may not know, I teach at a local university here, and I've been teaching since 2012. And at the end of every semester, these are undergrads, psychology, sociology, criminal justice. At the end of every semester, I tell them that we're going to have your final presentation. And every semester, they give me all kinds of, they would prefer a test. They would prefer 100-question exam over a 15-minute presentation. And this is what I wanted to say. Since 2012, fast forward to this past couple of years, the communication skills have declined among young people. And so I won't give them a written test. I always tell them we are going to do a presentation, because the biggest fear among these students is getting up in front of people. And I think that it shows how far we've gone because of COVID. So when I'm working with students, I help them with their communication skills. And when I'm working with adults, you guys, companies, one of the things I'm seeing we are lacking is communication skills. So whether you're on a stage or you're across from somebody or you're in a room with 2 people or 10 people, communication is key. So I think it's important to remember that no matter what you're talking about, no matter where you're speaking, you got to have good communication skills. It's the way it is. So with that said, I think we should remember to pour into the next generation, because they are the future. Thanks. Back to you, Dominic.
Hey, Prof T, we appreciate you. Pour in, and we're going to pour into each other. That's what's going on in this room. Okay, we have a hard stop at 11. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people that are going to come on here, and they're going to share a tip with us, a 22 tip or a speaking tip. But if you see me Expediter, I used to work at Fridays, and the expediter always yelled and screamed and made us move things along quicker. So if you see me doing that, that's the reason why. So Dr. Laura, love the picture, by the way. So go on, Dr. Laura.
Oh, goodness. I agree. I'm happy to be here, and to expedite, I'm happy to pass. That's
Hey,
all.
no, well,
I'm-
come on, give us a tip. One tip.
Know your material. I've having worked for 4 universities and overseas, working with the military, doing briefings. Know your material. Repetition is key, and that's it. I don't want to belabor because there's other people waiting. So thank you so much. I've spoken so much in my life. I'm good. Thank you.
Hey, well, we always appreciate anybody who stops by, and I think it was somebody before saying safe space. And when we say it, we just try, meaning we got your back. If you come up here, anything we're gonna let everybody come up here, whether you've ever written a book or you've sold 3 million copies, or if you're thinking about making a video or you've Emmy nominated like our friend Tom. Well, we want to hear from everybody, and that's why we say it's a safe space. We're learning, we learn new things, educate ourselves. Amanda, what's going on, Amanda? A tip, something we need to do in 2022 that you did, or a speaking tip? Go on. See, I say I'm going faster. That's what happens. My segues are bad, but okay, now let's see. Okay, Elle, I see our friend Elle here. She's not fly fishing today. It's interesting. Today, there's no fly fishing picture, a different type of picture. Elle, something you did in 22 that we should follow suit because it worked so well for you, or since we were talking speaking or anything else, what kind of tip you want to give us today?
What a great room. I'll make it quick. I speak often about 2 things.
Uh-oh, your mic's low. Something's going on. You're in a vortex.
Is that better?
No, not yet. Give it a 3, 2, 1 and try again.
Is that better?
No.
It's very soft.
Now it's now okay. Try one more time, Al.
How's that?
No good. All right, come back out, come back in. All right, let's go to our friend Satva. What's going on, Satva?
What's up, Dominic? What's up, room? I guess the speaking tip. When I was, 21, 22, 23, and a couple times there when I was 18, 19, I would be tasked with giving sermons to my congregations. So this could be anywhere from like 100 to maybe sometimes 250 people, as well as youth groups that I was a part of, and I had to speak. So what I would do is I would just do those bullet points like was already stated and dive into whatever topic it was, really speak from the heart, have passion. The purpose obviously was, to help people, get them to see a message, whatever that may be, and to have a little bit of fun. That's it. That's what I got. Thanks.
That's good stuff, Satva. I mean, have fun, isn't it? What it's all about, being happy. Come on, shouldn't you? Like we talked about Lincoln saying, be passionate, getting punched in the face, and be passionate about what you're talking about. So, hey, Julie, you here? We were talking about your dogs earlier. We were talking about your dogs.
Is that a backhanded compliment, Dominic? Getting punched? Maybe I'm
No,
reading
that was
into it.
from Lincoln. Lincoln said, if you were, Lincoln said, if you want to be a good speaker, get punched in the face. Meaning, I guarantee you could talk. I guarantee something your parents, like your children. I tell my kids no. I guarantee they could public speak on the opposite of whatever I told them no on, because they'd be so passionate on why they should have. My daughter got Snapchat taken.
I love it. I love it. Thanks, Dominic. Thanks for clarification.
Yeah, I've got to finish that. My daughter got Snapchat taken away for a while. She has it back. I guarantee she could have gave the best public speech on why she should have had Snapchat back when she had it taken away, because she was passionate about it.
It's funny.
Okay, now let's go on here. Blake, what's going on? Oh, Blake with his dog. Pictures of dogs are great. That's my marketing tip. We didn't do marketing tips today, but put some pictures of your dogs and stuff, and then people will look at it like we're looking at Blake's. Go on, Blake.
Yeah, I just put this on when I started Clubhouse a couple of years ago. I haven't been on for a while. I just started jumping in last month. Thanks for having me in the room. Hello, everybody. Really some words of some knowledge passing through. It's a great room. So thanks, Dominic. My tip is more technical. Something that my vocal coach taught me a while back, and it's super basic, but it didn't make sense until she actually showed me. But you just get a balloon, just a random balloon, and you blow into it. and you'll notice the muscles that you use are coming from your lower back. It's like they're pushing in. And she started showing me pictures of the human body and, how, diaphragm and where everything's coming from. And then it just clicked. And I would say, like, it's like exercising, like doing push-ups or something, or sit-ups. Blow in a balloon and recognize the muscles that are being used. And then after that, read whatever text you're reading, and you can, with your index finger and your thumb, and not too hard, of course, hold onto your tongue and try to say the text and be very as clear as you can using those muscles. And that's the key. And everything's just pushing out that way. And that way you don't slur, you're not sucking in your words, and you're not using your throat, because what happens is when you're nervous, you tend to use your upper body more, your throat, and your neck gets tense. So I think it's important to also take breaths, time. And yeah, that's it. Just very technical, very basic stuff. I don't know. I think it was Amanda was saying earlier, or somebody was saying it. Yeah, I have to we have to get more clear on speaking, and I think that's really healthy as well. It's important to breathe. Breath in of itself is a miracle. So yeah, that's it.
Blake, I appreciate that. And when you go technical like that, I've never thought about the actual muscles and things like that. And we call this we changed the name a couple of weeks ago to Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. And that makes me know that I am not the smartest guy in the room when somebody drops knowledge like that. And I will say, on the breath thing, the audience, sometimes we're speeding through stuff. Like, let's say me, you guys are like, God, Dominick's annoying. He's talking so fast. But I could slow it down and pause here and there, and nobody in this room would be like, hey, this guy's pausing. So there is a point where you can say, hey, whoa, you can take a break, and the audience isn't going to say, wow, this guy, what the hell is going on? He stopped it always feels longer for the speaker than it does the audience when you pause. And as our friend Blake says, take that breath. That breath is okay. Okay, let's go to our friend Al. What's going on, Al? We're going to try this again.
I think I figured it out.
I think you sound a little better. It's not great. So let's give us a quick tip.
My quick tip was, I like what Elise had to say about scripts, and how that works depending on what it is you're speaking about. I speak about two things. I speak often about wine. I do wine education. I do guided wine tastings. People don't want a scripted wine tasting. So my graphics are always bright, they're wine, they're food, but I'm not working off of that. So, but when I'm talking about fly fishing and I'm addressing a group of women, that's more technical. So I'm going to have a PowerPoint, and I'm going to have what they need to know. But even then, I want to infuse passion, because it is something that you need to feel and you need to be moved by. So I think depending on what it is you're speaking about, in Elisa's case, if it's something that's financial, is something that is very technical, you do need that. But I still think, for me, if I'm listening to a speaker, if it feels read and they don't have a grasp of the content that they are reading, I could read that myself. I could have stayed home. I could have read it myself somewhere. I want to feel something. I want to feel like they understand the material, even if it's technical. If that makes sense. So I think it's just getting very comfortable with your content. Really, really comfortable. I have absolutely loved it.
Al, thank you. And this idea of, I want to feel it, me too. I want to feel when that speaker's, whatever the subject is, if it's about their dogs, if it's about their politics, if it's about whatever they are passionate about, I want to feel it. And I don't know that if you're reading across the lines, because you're focused on the next word that you're going to read and where the comma and period is, that the audience is going to feel it. We said we're going to get out of here. Hey, look at my segues. I am good. We said we're going to get out of here by 11. That's that. Tom, I like to put the pressure on Tom for wrap up. Some days Tom's just going to say, Dominic, no, you do it. I'm going to be like, So then you'll hear the uhs and buts and ums because I got nothing. Tom, take us home, my friend.
Thanks, Dom. Yeah. So first of all, obviously want to thank everybody for coming here today, participating, educating, sharing your knowledge with Dom and I, because we are not the smartest guys in the room. And we appreciate you guys coming here every week and helping us learn, helping us all improve. I think it's one of those things that is often overlooked and underestimated. But together we have an incredible power to improve each other and to move forward. We only do that by sharing in spaces like this. And so we really appreciate it. Like Dom was saying earlier, when we talk about having a safe space, it's a space that is safe for everyone to share your thoughts or opinions in, to ask questions, to share knowledge, a space where learning and improvement is encouraged above all else. So that's what we're working towards doing here every week. We appreciate you guys tremendously. And then the last thing I want to say, I just want to share a little reminder for everyone. We talked about at the beginning of this room today, we kind of started by thinking about what we didn't get done in 2022 and what we wanted to get done in 2023. And whatever that is for you, just always remember as you plan for it moving into 2023 over the course of the next month, right? As we start December, the last month of 2022 tomorrow, remember that everything takes consistency and time. Everything worth achieving is worth working for, and it will not happen overnight. There is no such thing as an overnight success for you, for me, or for anybody. What we never see when we hear people talked about or described as overnight successes is the tremendous amount of work, sometimes decades of work, that people put in before they achieved that big goal. So just remember that you have to put in that work over time with consistency to achieve those big goals. But don't be afraid to set big goals. So, my big goal, my big lifelong goal is to humanize the world of business through better communication, right? That is a ridiculously huge goal. There will never be a time in my life when I check a box and lean back in my recliner and say, well, I'm all done, right? It's never going to happen, but it gives me something to work towards every day. So find that goal for yourself, give yourself something to work towards every day. And let's have an incredible rest of 2022 and an even better 2023. Thanks everybody for being here this week. Really appreciate you. Appreciate you being here every week. And we will see you next Wednesday for the next installment of Dom and Tom, Not the Smartest Guys in the Room. Thanks everybody. We'll see you then.